I don't necessarily think that's engineered to be addictive. I think it's engineered to be really well, and work really well, and the fact that it works really.
How long until Joe Rogan is cancelled like Alex Jones? You'd be forgiven for thinking that the looming threat of cancel culture would stop high-profile podcasters and vloggers from speaking freely about topics that the powers that be have deemed arbitrarily risky. However, in many cases, it seems to only spur people on, as well-known free thinkers like Alex Jones and Joe Rogan have made it clear how they feel about these issues. As the governments, big tech, news media, and lefty maniacs on Twitter worked together and took down Alex Jones, you would think that Joe Rogan would be next, but he's not. But how long will it be until Joe Rogan is cancelled like Alex Jones? Let's take a look. You're with Best of Tens. Like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell for more content like this. So, for years, Alex Jones was considered by many to be a nutcase who spouted insane conspiracy theories online, using his own particular brand of frothing, bubbling rage to get his points across.
Do you understand? The Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.
When Jones went on...
Everyone remembers his claims about gay frogs and things like that.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
But for some reason, he got a lot more attention from mainstream media and leftists on Twitter than most others who said similar things, albeit in a calmer, more considered way. This all came to a head in 2018, of course, when Alex Jones and his InfoWars works were suddenly removed from Facebook, Apple, YouTube, and Spotify, all at the same time. The problem is that when a guy who believes that big tech companies are colluding to influence the flow of information gets banned from all big tech platforms simultaneously and is no longer able to share his information, it makes a few eyebrows raise. Of course, this is the same big tech that suddenly made it impossible to hear the words of the 45th President of the United States in early 2021, shortly after an extremely suspicious election saw him seem to win and then suddenly lose, all backed fervently by big tech, the news media, and anyone who considers themselves a leftist. The fact that these bodies all peddle the same verbiage of hate speech, racism, sexism, and about a billion different phobias raises even more eyebrows. And so it has been that people like Alex Jones probably have more credibility in the public eye now than they ever have. The other angle that it would be remiss not to mention is that in the last 5 to 6 years, perhaps even longer, there has been a shift in the media and the big tech companies, as more and more feeds have been populated with social justice talking points and rabid hatred of the actually quite successful 45th president. He certainly did better than his successor has anyway. A lot of people are, as the big tech and entertainment companies refer to them, consumers who consume everything that is given to them by these powers and don't think or ask questions. But there is a growing and rapidly organizing contingent of people who noticed these changes in the public narrative and grew ever more skeptical as their voices were drowned out in critical theories and claims of isms, phobias, and hate on any platform they'd care to visit. The moment the mask slipped for many of these people was, ironically, the beginning of March 2020, when suddenly their freedoms were taken away and they were forced to wear literal masks in order to combat a virus that only very few people actually saw any real threat from. To many people, this was the decisive proof that there is something fishy going on between the media and technological superpowers. As anyone who asks any questions about the last 2 years is labeled on social media as spreading misinformation, it creates a kind of Barbara Streisand effect, where the more you try to bury something, the more it just spreads around until everyone is talking about it. It became even worse as the legacy news media, politicians, and doctors, most notably Dr. Anthony Fauci, the man who is mostly responsible for the world's pandemic tactics, have been exposed to have lied on several occasions at best. So it is then that over the past few years, these people have distanced themselves from the news media and platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and the mainstream news, finding their information and coverage of important topics, as well as less important topics, through independent or alternative sources. And of these, the one who has risen to become the king of the common sense alternative media is stand-up comic and MMA commentator Joe Rogan, whose podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, has become so unbelievably successful that the show was bought by Spotify outright for $100 million in order for the company to have exclusive rights to the show. The problem is, powerful as Rogan has become, he holds a wide variety of political views and does not fall particularly easy on either side of the political spectrum. In many ways, he is reflective of the overwhelming majority of Western cultured people across the planet, having socially liberal views on things like same-sex marriage, gay rights, women's rights, and recreational drug use, but also supporting gun rights and the Second Amendment. Like most of the millions of jaded and skeptical people who have found their way to his show, he strongly supports freedom of speech and has been highly critical of cancel culture, having openly discussed the suppression of right-wing views in the media, entertainment, and big tech. We need to take a moment at this point to address the problem that people still refer to this cultural divide as being between the left and the right, when in fact, it is between far left-leaning authoritarians who want big government to handle everything for them in exchange for their limited freedom and the suppression of free speech, and the slightly right-sided libertarians who are firmly against the government getting involved in their affairs and want to be able to live their lives and handle their own business. So, it's more of a battle between up and down and less left and right. However, the left and the powers seem to utterly despise Rogan, and this has grown only more fervent over the last couple of years, especially when governments across the world decided to start forcing people to get vaccinated against the virus that had still yet to show any true threat to the human race's existence, bar the deaths of the elderly or infirm. Rogan satisfied his legions of fans, whether he meant to or not, by stating his belief that young and healthy people should not be concerned about getting vaccinated. He was criticized by Dr. Fauci for this approach.
Talking about yourself in a vacuum, then. You're worried about yourself getting infected and likelihood that you're not going to get any symptoms.
But then again, this is Fauci, who has lied under oath about his communications with a certain lab in Wuhan. Rogan annoyed the left even more when he tested positive for the virus on September the 1st, 2021.
I got up in the morning, got tested, and turns out I got COVID.
And began a regimen that involved ivermectin,
Antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone.
a drug taken to treat parasitic infections, and not endorsed by the powers of affiliated medical experts. This led to a coalition of doctors petitioning Spotify to ban Rogan, though Spotify decided to side with their top star. The fact that Joe Rogan is even in the same conversation as Alex Jones looks to many people to be proof positive of collusion between multiple powers to control the flow of information. But because Rogan is so valuable as a personality, he can almost say and do whatever he wants, without fear of being cancelled. He opened an account on Twitter alternative Getter recently, for example, after Twitter changed management and started suppressing free speech. And thousands upon thousands of people flocked to the platform to ensure they didn't miss anything. If the left-wing media government entertainment coalition want to deplatform Joe Rogan, they'd better either dig up or make up something truly horrible about him. Because he's not going to just go away like they tried to make Alex Jones go away. If they did somehow manage to cancel Rogan, it would only prove to his fans even more that foul play is afoot. But what do you think about this? Comment down below. And before you make your way to the comment section, take a detour to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the notification bell. For more content like this, be sure to check out these other videos from Best of Tens.